I invite you to hear the account of the day an intern spilled coffee on me and loudly announced that her husband was the CEO of the hospital. I calmly placed a call to my husband and said, "You should come down here and see this. Your new wife just threw coffee on me." The Boeing 787 landed firmly on the runway at JFK International Airport. After more than 12 hours in the air from Frankfurt, the engines finally quieted and a calm settled over the business class cabin. I closed my book, straightened the wrinkles in my trousers, and removed my carry-on from the overhead bin as I stepped onto the jet bridge. The warm, crowded air of a New York summer hit my face, carrying that familiar mix of heat and grit that, for anyone who has been away, feels strangely like returning home. My name is Catherine Hayes. I am 32 years old, and to the outside world, I am a woman who appears to have everything. I am the sole heiress of the late chairman of Apex Medical Group, holding a 60% controlling stake and final authority in one of the largest private hospital systems in the United States. What the world does not see is the heavy burden behind that polished title. Since my father's sudden death from a serious illness, I have carried the full weight of his legacy. I have had to manage a boardroom filled with experienced, calculating shareholders while still trying to preserve some sense of a stable family life. This business trip to Germany had lasted exactly 1 month. I personally visited multiple factories to negotiate the purchase of advanced medical equipment for our flagship hospital. This responsibility should have belonged to my husband, Mark Thompson, who currently held the CEO position. However, I knew his strengths and his limits. Mark was attractive, confident, and skilled at networking and social charm. But when it came to technical detail or firm negotiations in English, let alone German, he struggled. Out of love for him, and to strengthen his standing with a demanding board, I agreed to stay in the background. My official role was Chief Strategy Officer, but in practice, I was the one managing every major and minor issue so he could present success. A black town car waited for me at the VIP arrivals terminal and moved smoothly across the Whitestone Bridge toward Manhattan. I chose not to go home yet. I wanted to brief the board on my trip and, more importantly, see for myself how the hospital had been managed during my absence. Apex University Hospital stood prominently on the Upper East Side, a 20-story structure of blue-tinted glass reflecting the afternoon sun. It represented my father's life's work. As I looked at the clean sign with its stylized cross logo, I felt pride mixed with a quiet, unshakable unease. I asked the driver to stop at the main entrance instead of the private executive entry. I wanted to pull my suitcase through the lobby myself and experience the hospital as an ordinary visitor. I wanted real sounds and real behavior, not the refined version shown in reports. The lobby was crowded and loud. The PA system announced patient numbers, families spoke in anxious whispers, and doctors and nurses moved quickly through the space. The scent of antiseptic filled the cool air. I stood near the reception desk, adjusting my white pantsuit, planning to observe briefly before going up to Mark's office to surprise him. My attention was suddenly drawn to the center of the lobby. A tall man in white scrubs was kneeling on the marble floor. It was Dr. David Chen, head of cardiology, an old friend from medical school, and the hospital's most critical clinical leader. He was performing CPR on a middle-aged man who had collapsed from hypoglycemia. Sweat covered David's forehead and dripped onto the floor. His movements were fast and precise, guided by experience and focus. "Give him space. Let him breathe," he said firmly. "Nurse, I need a glucose meter and a glass of warm sugar water now." I watched silently. David had not changed in 15 years. He was always steady, always focused on others, never interested in status or wealth. When my father died, David stood by the casket for days, managing every detail, while Mark was occupied with hosting foreign guests. Watching David support the patient's head with complete concentration, unaware of everything else around him, I felt deep respect. That was what real medicine looked like: skill, responsibility, and care, untouched by ego or ambition. That image was abruptly disrupted. Near the revolving doors, a young woman stood with her hands on her hips, her sharp voice cutting through the space. She complained loudly about her Mercedes being parked in the sun and blamed the valet for the heat affecting her car's leather seats and designer bag. She appeared to be about 22, wearing heavy makeup and a tight, bright pink dress that was clearly inappropriate for a hospital. An intern badge on her chest read, Tiffany Henry. The valet, an elderly Vietnam veteran who had worked here since my father's time, lowered his head and apologized. He explained that the morning had been busy and that he would move the car immediately. Tiffany ignored him, stomped her foot, and insulted his speed and competence, questioning how someone like him could work at a high-end hospital. After finishing her remarks, she pulled out her phone, switched to the front camera, and instantly changed her expression. She smiled brightly and began addressing her followers, complaining about staff while promoting positivity and asking viewers to engage with her live stream. I checked the time. It was 9:15 a.m. An employee was late, dressed against policy, verbally attacking a colleague, and broadcasting personal content during work hours in the main lobby. Anger rose quickly. This was not the standard of professionalism I had been promised. This was not the culture my father and I had built. The contrast was unmistakable. A physician saving a life on the floor and an intern focused on attention and appearance. I tightened my grip on my suitcase, took a controlled breath, and stepped forward. I was done observing. I walked over to Henry and placed a steady hand on his shoulder to reassure him. He startled slightly, then looked up, his tired eyes widening as he recognized me. He was about to address me as chairwoman, but I quickly raised a finger to my lips, signaling him to stay quiet. I did not want my identity known yet. I wanted to see how this situation would unfold. I then turned to Tiffany, who was still focused on posing and sulking into her phone. "Excuse me," I said, keeping my voice calm, firm, and controlled. "This is a hospital. It is a place for care and professionalism, not a runway or a space to shout at senior staff. The workday begins at 8 a.m. It is now 9 a.m. You are late, and you are creating a public disturbance." Pulled out of her fixation on likes and compliments, Tiffany looked irritated. She lowered her phone and scanned me dismissively from head to toe. I was dressed in a simple white pantsuit with little jewelry and minimal makeup after a long flight. To her, I likely appeared to be an ordinary patient's relative or someone she felt free to disregard. "And who are you to interfere?" she snapped. "I'm correcting my employee. If you have nothing better to do, find a seat and stop bothering me. I'm working with my followers." She lifted her phone again and shoved it toward my face. Her voice turned shrill and exaggerated. "Look at this, everyone. Some bitter old woman is ruining my day. Probably miserable and alone, so she comes here to cause trouble. Poor Tiffany, getting bullied at work." Her behavior went beyond simple rudeness. I had intended to give a brief warning and let HR handle the rest, but this level of disrespect could not continue. "Put the phone down. Now," I said quietly, meeting her eyes. "You are violating hospital policy and disrespecting others. If you continue filming and insulting people, security will escort you out and a formal report will be filed." She laughed sharply. "Are you threatening me?" she sneered. Then, holding a half-full iced coffee, she turned suddenly. The movement looked accidental, but it was deliberate. She slammed into me, spilling the entire drink over my white suit. Cold liquid soaked through the fabric and pooled at my feet. The smell of coffee filled the air. The suit had been a gift from my father on his last birthday. It was now ruined by an intentional act. Before I could respond, Tiffany began crying loudly. Her exaggerated sobs echoed through the lobby, drawing attention from everyone nearby. "What is wrong with you?" she cried. "You pushed me. You ruined my dress." She cried while checking her live stream, performing for the camera. Everyone saw it. This woman assaulted a healthcare worker. This dress was custom made. It cost $2,000. It's destroyed. People nearby, unaware of what had actually happened, looked at me with suspicion. Some even raised their phones to record. Seeing the crowd's reaction, Tiffany leaned closer and lowered her voice so only I could hear. "You will apologize right now and pay for this. Do you know who my husband is? Mark Thompson, the CEO of this hospital. He can end your life here. No doctor will treat you again." Hearing my husband's name from her mouth felt unreal. Mark Thompson, the man I had trusted and supported, now supposedly tied to this display of arrogance. I looked at the stain on my suit, then back at her. Instead of anger, I felt a sharp, hollow calm. I wiped my hand with a handkerchief and raised my head. You said your husband is CEO Mark Thompson. That's right, she said smugly. Scared now? Get on your knees and clean my shoes, and maybe I'll ask him to forgive you. Before I could respond, someone stepped between us. It was David. He had just finished attending to the emergency patient, antiseptic still clinging to his scrubs. He stood tall and steady, his presence alone silencing the crowd. Phones lowered. He glanced at the coffee stain on my suit, then looked at Tiffany with controlled intensity. Miss Jones, he said calmly, each word clear. Why are you causing a disruption in the main lobby? Tiffany hesitated for a moment, then recovered her confidence, relying on her supposed connection to the CEO. Dr. Chen, you saw it. She pushed me and ruined the dress Mark gave me. I'm streaming this so people can see what kind of violent individuals come into this hospital. David did not even look at her phone. He calmly pointed toward the large plaque of hospital regulations mounted on the wall. Please read this, he said evenly. Rule 1, respect all patients and their families. Rule 3, attire must be professional and comply with hospital dress code. Rule 5, personal activities or business that cause a disturbance are prohibited during work hours. Now look at yourself and tell me how many of these rules you have violated. Tiffany froze, her face flushing as anger and embarrassment set in. She stumbled over her words before snapping back. I'm a special case. Mark said I could dress however I want to be creative. You're just a hired doctor. What gives you the right to lecture me? I'll tell Mark to fire you right now. Standing behind David, I felt the sharp irony of it all. This was how Mark had been indulging her, allowing an intern to behave as if she owned the hospital, calling the head of cardiology nothing more than a hired employee, and hiding behind the CEO's name to excuse her conduct. David let out a brief, humorless laugh, rare for someone usually so composed. A hired doctor, yes, he said. I was hired for my expertise, my ethics, and my responsibility to save lives. And you, what exactly are you doing here? You are degrading the profession of medicine and damaging this hospital's reputation for the sake of online attention. He stepped closer, his presence alone forcing her back. You claim to be CEO Mark Thompson's fiancée. Let me be clear, anyone with real dignity would never boast about such an affair in public, nor would they ever speak so disrespectfully to an elder like Henry. His words struck their mark. Tiffany's face burned as the mood around us shifted. The crowd's whispers now focused on her. People began murmuring that her behavior was shameful, her appearance inappropriate, and that the woman in the white suit had been wronged. Realizing she was losing control of the situation, Tiffany switched tactics and played the victim. She cried loudly into her phone, accusing the doctors of bullying her and calling for Mark to rescue her. David turned to me, concern softening his expression. Catherine, he asked quietly, are you all right? Did the coffee burn you? I shook my head and gave him a small smile. I'm fine. Thank you for stepping in. As he moved to call security, I placed a hand on his arm to stop him. Don't, I said softly. This is a family issue. Let me handle it. I want to see exactly who my husband chooses to defend. I faced Tiffany directly. You want to call Mark? I'll help you. Let's see how this ends. I took my phone from my purse. It was 10:15 a.m. According to my assistant's schedule, Mark was in a critical meeting with officials from the Department of Health and investors from Singapore in the VIP conference room on the 5th floor. Image mattered to him more than anything. I scrolled to his contact name, My Love, a name that now felt hollow, and pressed call. It rang several times before he answered in a hushed, practiced tone. Honey, I'm in an important meeting. Did you land safely? Why didn't you tell me? I ignored his questions and switched the call to speaker. The lobby went silent. You're in a meeting? I asked coldly. Yes, a very important one. Why don't you go home and rest? I'll make it up to you tonight, he said, keeping up the act. I cut him off. You don't need to come home. You need to come to the main lobby right now. He protested, saying he was busy. I raised my voice, the restraint finally breaking. Come down here and see your new wife throwing coffee on me, insulting Dr. Chen, and threatening to have me removed from the hospital my father built. The line went silent. I imagined the shock spreading through the room on his end. A chair scraped loudly, followed by his unsteady voice. Catherine, what are you talking about? What new wife? Across from me, Tiffany's color drained as she recognized his voice and heard the way he spoke to me. "You have 5 minutes," I said calmly. "If you are not here, my lawyer, Mr. Vance, will bring the necessary documents to your conference room and discuss this situation with you and your partners." I ended the call. The lobby remained silent except for the low hum of the air conditioning. Every eye was on me, the woman in the coffee-stained suit, standing with unmistakable authority, the presence of the person who truly held control. David stood beside me with his arms crossed, his expression firm and assured. He understood that the situation was only beginning to unfold. Tiffany was shaking, her phone nearly slipping from her hand. She stared at me in disbelief, her lips trembling. Who are you?" I met her gaze and smiled, a calm expression that carried no warmth. "Why did you stop your live stream?" I said evenly. "Turn it back on. Let everyone see how your husband responds to his legal wife." Those 5 minutes felt endless for Mark Thompson and marked the collapse of Tiffany's illusion of influence. I stood upright, composed, waiting. The lobby felt heavy and tense. Patients, staff, and visitors instinctively stepped back, forming a wide circle around us. At the center stood David, Tiffany, and me. Tiffany had lowered her phone, no longer daring to aim it at me, though her finger still hovered over the record button. She clung to a final hope, convincing herself I was merely a business associate or the unimportant wife Mark complained about. She still believed in her youth and in the promises he fed her. "Don't try to scare me," she said weakly. "Mark loves me. Even if you're his wife, that's just a title. Men get bored. They want something new, and I am new." I ignored her remark. I took out my phone and sent a short message to my legal counsel. "Arthur, bring File A to the main lobby, immediately." His reply came at once. "Understood, Madam Chairwoman. I'm on my way." David stepped closer, positioning himself between me and the crowd. "Are you certain you want to do this here?" he asked quietly. "It could affect the hospital's image." I looked at him steadily. "If you don't remove a problem at its source, it spreads. This hospital was built on honesty. Protecting appearances at the cost of integrity would destroy it." David nodded. "I understand. I'm with you." Meanwhile, Tiffany's livestream comments shifted tone. Viewers questioned who I was, speculated that I might be the real wife, and waited for the CEO to arrive. Tiffany glanced at the screen, her confidence fading, but she continued insisting Mark would remove me once he arrived. The elevator bell sounded. The executive elevator doors opened, and Mark rushed out, his suit wrinkled, his tie crooked, his composure gone. He scanned the scene, then saw Tiffany, then me. I stood with my arms folded, David beside me. Mark froze. He knew immediately what this meant. Tiffany ran to him, clinging to his arm. "Honey, you're here. They were bullying me. She threw coffee on me. They threatened me." Mark did not respond. His face drained of color. He understood that the woman standing before him was not only his wife, but the chairwoman who controlled his position and future. "Mark," I said calmly, "your companion is upset. Aren't you going to address it?" Tiffany shook his arm, demanding he assert authority. Mark turned toward her. The affection in his eyes was gone, replaced by anger and fear. In that moment, he acted. He struck her across the face. The sound echoed through the lobby. Tiffany stumbled and fell. Her phone slid across the floor, still recording. She stared up at him in shock. Mark shouted, denying everything, insisting he did not know her and accusing her of lying. The crowd gasped. He turned to me immediately, his tone changing. He pleaded, claiming she meant nothing, that I was his only wife. Watching him deflect responsibility was unsettling. On the floor, Tiffany recovered from the shock and shouted back. She accused him openly, naming hotels, properties, and months of involvement. Her words erased any credibility he had left. The phone continued recording everything. Mark lunged toward her, but David stepped in, stopping him with ease. "Enough," David said firmly. "You are embarrassing this institution." I walked toward Mark. Each step echoed sharply on the marble floor. I stopped in front of him and looked directly into his eyes. There was no affection left, only finality. "You said you don't know her?" I asked, my voice steady and controlled. "Then why does she have keycard access to your office? And why did her bank account receive a $2 million transfer from your private offshore account last month?" Mark's eyes widened in shock. He never imagined I was aware of that money. The $2 million he had diverted from the MRI procurement project. He believed it was buried safely behind layers of shell companies. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered, still clinging to the lie. I have no idea about any of that. At that moment, Arthur Vance stepped out of the crowd holding a thick folder. He came to my side, inclined his head respectfully, and handed it to me. Madam Chairwoman, he said, these are the full bank records, the purchase agreement for the condominium registered under Tiffany Jones's name, and security footage from the Mandarin Oriental covering the past 3 months, all obtained legally. I took the folder and dropped it at Mark's feet. Papers spilled across the floor, laying everything bare. Read it, I said. Read it and see exactly what you've been doing behind my back. Mark stared down at the documents, his face drained of color. He understood it was over. His legs gave way and he fell to his knees, clutching the edge of my suit. Catherine, he pleaded, I was wrong. I made a terrible mistake. Please, for our 10 years of marriage, forgive me. Just this once. I'll end it with her. I'll do anything. Please. The sight of the hospital's CEO kneeling and begging sent another ripple through the lobby. People whispered in disbelief. So she really is the chairwoman. She went undercover. He deserved it. Cheating and stealing. Tiffany sat frozen off to the side, watching the man she believed would secure her future collapse completely. She finally understood that her dream of becoming the CEO's wife was gone, and that legal consequences now loomed for receiving stolen money. I looked down at Mark without sympathy. Our 10 years of marriage, I said quietly. When you stole money meant to save lives to buy your mistress a condo, did you think about our marriage? When you allowed her to insult me and our staff, did that ever cross your mind? I stepped back and turned toward the assembled employees. Raising my voice clearly, I said, I am Catherine Hayes, chairwoman of the board of Apex Medical Group. Effective immediately, Mark Thompson is terminated as CEO for severe ethical violations and suspected felony embezzlement. All decisions made by him from this moment forward are void. The announcement hit like a blow. The lobby erupted into loud discussion. I saw relief on the faces of doctors who had endured his leadership and quiet satisfaction among staff he had mistreated. Still, Mark was not finished. Desperation set in. He forced himself upright, wiping his knees and trying to reclaim authority. You can't do this, he shouted. You can't accuse me based on unverified bank statements. That money was an investment for the new hospital wing. The paperwork just isn't finalized. This is all a misunderstanding. He turned to the crowd. I am CEO Mark Thompson. I've devoted 5 years to this hospital. I would never harm it. This is a setup. I watched him silently. The excuse was weak and improvised. He truly believed paperwork could shield him. Before I needed to respond, another voice cut through the noise. An investment in the new wing, David said calmly. He stepped forward holding a tablet, standing directly across from Mark. Our asset system tells a different story. 2 weeks ago, you approved the purchase of 10 advanced ventilators and a next-generation MRI system, while the chairwoman was in Germany negotiating those same contracts. The total value was $2 million. How do you explain that? Mark stumbled over his words, sweat pouring down his face. The shipment is coming. There were customs delays. You wouldn't understand logistics. David's expression remained cold. He swiped the screen, revealing an email. I can read, he said. This is confirmation from our German supplier sent this morning. They never received payment, and no equipment has left their facility. Another collective gasp filled the lobby. The evidence was undeniable. David did not stop there. His words landed with clinical precision, cutting through Mark's fabrications. You claimed the equipment was already en route, yet our warehouse is completely empty. You cited an urgent down payment to secure the order, diverted the funds, and moved them into a shell company. At the same time, Miss Jones was suddenly able to purchase a luxury condominium for that exact sum. Did you truly believe the chairwoman would not uncover this? Mark stood frozen, staggering back as his body shook. He never expected David to be so informed. In his mind, David had always been a quiet academic doctor focused on medicine, not someone tracking financial misconduct. I looked at David with renewed respect. While I was away, he had not only fulfilled his medical duties with excellence, but had also quietly safeguarded my family's legacy, collecting evidence and waiting for my return to help remove the corruption from within our organization. David then turned to me, his expression steady. Madam Chairwoman, as head of cardiology and a member of the medical board, I can confirm that the absence of this equipment has already harmed patient care. Mr. Thompson's actions go beyond financial misconduct. They directly endangered patients' lives. This is an unforgivable violation. That final statement ended any remaining defense. Mark collapsed to the floor, his gaze empty, all resistance gone. The truth was fully exposed, and the lobby now resembled a public hearing. I recognized it was time to restore order and assert authority. I stepped onto the small platform at the reception desk and took the microphone from the visibly shaken receptionist. Addressing staff, patients, and guests, my voice carried clearly through the space. What occurred here today is a serious disgrace to Apex University Hospital. On behalf of the board, I offer my sincere apologies to everyone present for being subjected to this incident. I scanned the crowd, seeing both anger and hope. However, the misconduct of one individual must not overshadow the dedication of hundreds of professionals who save lives here daily. To stabilize operations and ensure continuity, I will now issue the following executive decisions. The room fell silent. First, I indicated Mark, still slumped on the floor. Mr. Mark Thompson is terminated effective immediately and stripped of all titles and authority. Our legal department will fully cooperate with the district attorney to prosecute him for embezzlement and to review his prior actions. Security, escort him from the premises. 2 security officers promptly lifted him to his feet. He did not resist, his head lowered as he was led through the crowd amid hushed expressions of contempt. The former CEO now appeared as nothing more than a disgraced offender. Second, I continued, my tone measured, the position of CEO cannot remain unfilled. The hospital requires leadership grounded in integrity, competence, and responsibility. That leader is the individual who stood for truth today. I turned to David and gestured toward him. I am appointing Dr. David Chen as Interim Chief Executive Officer of Apex University Hospital, effective immediately. I am confident that his expertise and ethical judgment will guide this institution forward. David appeared briefly surprised, but quickly composed himself. He joined me on the platform and inclined his head. Applause rose instantly, beginning with junior staff and spreading throughout the room. The response was not only support for David, but affirmation of accountability and justice. David accepted the microphone and spoke concisely. Thank you for your trust. I will work to ensure this hospital operates with transparency and places patient care above all else. Thank you. As Mark was escorted away and David received recognition, one matter remained unresolved. Tiffany, once confident and dismissive, sat huddled in a corner, her composure gone. Attempting to leave unnoticed, she was stopped when Arthur Vance signaled security. Miss Jones, where are you going so quickly? Arthur asked calmly. We still need to address the chairwoman's lawsuit and the reputational harm you caused this hospital. Terrified, Tiffany turned toward me, pleading. Her ambitions had collapsed, her protector arrested, and legal consequences looming. Madam Chairwoman, please forgive me, she cried, dropping to her knees. I was wrong. I was manipulated. Please don't fire me or sue me. I don't have the means to repay anything. I approached her, looking down without triumph, only restrained disappointment. You claim manipulation, yet who issued threats in my name, verbally abused staff, and publicly boasted about wealth gained unlawfully? Those were your own decisions. You were driven by greed and a false sense of authority that was never yours. I turned to Arthur. Terminate Miss Jones's internship immediately for gross misconduct and prepare documentation for the district attorney regarding her receipt of stolen funds. The condominium was purchased with embezzled money and must be fully recovered. At this, Tiffany broke down entirely. She understood that everything she had gained would be seized and that she would face lasting consequences. David approached quietly and placed a small business card in front of her. This belongs to a respected psychiatrist, he said evenly. I suggest you seek professional help. Learn accountability before pursuing recognition. His gesture, calm and restrained, stripped away her final illusion. Security escorted her out as her cries faded beyond the glass doors. The lobby gradually returned to routine. Staff resumed their duties, conversations dissolved, and the PA system resumed its announcements. I leaned against the reception desk, exhaustion settling in as the tension faded. The long journey, emotional shock, and confrontation had taken their toll. The outcome was decisive, yet hollow. The man I had trusted was revealed as someone unrecognizable, and the family I fought to protect was fractured beyond repair. David approached quietly with a bottle of water and stood to block the harsh sunlight. "Drink some water, Catherine," he said softly. "You handled this well. Your father would have been proud." I took a small sip, steadying myself. The cool water eased my dry throat and dulled some of the ache in my chest. I looked up at David, eyes stinging. "I'm so tired," I admitted softly. "I thought I was strong, but this hurts more than I imagined." He placed a steady hand on my shoulder, calm and reassuring. "Of course it hurts. You're human, not made of steel. But you faced it and cut out the corruption. Now it's time to heal. I've got things handled here. Go home and rest." I nodded faintly. I needed to leave, but rest wasn't really the goal. The next battle awaited, the divorce. Arthur Vance approached, file in hand, reading me instantly. "Madam Chairwoman, I've drafted the divorce petition. With this evidence of infidelity and embezzlement, the court will grant it quickly. Would you like to sign?" I drew a deep breath, summoning resolve, and signed with a firm stroke. That signature ended 10 years of my life, closed the chapter of a false family, and opened a new one. "Begin proceedings immediately. Freeze all joint assets. I want him to leave with nothing but the clothes on his back." Arthur took the petition with deep respect. I turned to David, offering a weary smile. "Thank you, David. I don't know what I would have done without you today." His smile warmed me. "Don't be a stranger. Your father saw what Mark truly was before it was too late. He made me promise I'd always look out for you. A man keeps his promises." I saw in his eyes not just loyalty, but a steady, enduring affection I had long overlooked. Yet now was not the time for that. I had to heal. I collected my suitcase and left the hospital, my shadow stretching long in the afternoon sun. Head high, I walked from the ruins of the past into a future full of challenge, but also hope. For the first time in years, I was not alone. The calm after the storm at the hospital was deceptive. Arriving home, I barely had a moment to sit before my phone buzzed incessantly. Alerts and notifications poured in, a flood of sensational headlines and doctored images spreading across social media. Healthcare CEO assaults intern in jealous rage. Cheating wife and doctor frame husband to seize company. Drama at Apex. CEO overthrown by wife and her lover. Someone had edited Tiffany's livestream, cutting her insults, arrogance, and bragging, leaving only clips of me stern, David shielding me, and Mark on his knees. Comments poured in, orchestrated by a professional troll farm. "Look at that wife's cold face. Poor husband. She bullies him at home. She's been sleeping with the doctor for years. This is all staged." I dropped the phone, realizing Mark had resorted to scorched earth tactics, using public opinion to twist the narrative, to paint me and David as villains. The doorbell rang. Arthur entered, face grim, file in hand. "Madam Chairwoman, social media attacks are escalating. Our IT traced it to a black PR firm using thousands of bots. Funds came from an anonymous account, likely the last of Mark's hidden money." I sank onto the sofa, pressing my temples. "What does he want? To get his job back?" "No," Arthur replied. "He knows that's impossible, He's trying to pressure you into a favorable divorce settlement, or simply revenge. Cornered people are dangerous." I sipped hot tea, steadying my thoughts. "I will not negotiate, not a penny. He chose dirty tactics. He will pay the consequences." "Shall we disable comments and issue a statement?" Arthur asked. "No," I said firmly. "Hiding makes us look guilty. Let them talk. The truth matters most. Gold isn't afraid of fire. Arrange a formal press conference for tomorrow. Invite every major network, newspaper, and tabloid. I will face them directly." Arthur nodded, admiration clear. "Understood." That night, sleep eluded me. I wandered the silent mansion, a home once filled with warmth, now cold. I peeked into my children's rooms. My little ones slept peacefully, unaware of the storm. I swore to remain strong. For them, my father's legacy, and myself. I would not fall. The next morning, the main auditorium at Apex University Hospital was packed with reporters. Camera flashes strobe lit the room, shutters clicking continuously. Everyone wanted the story of the billion-dollar scandal. I entered in a simple black dress, composed, resolute. David stood beside me, calm and dignified, drawing the room's attention. We sat at the head table. I opened the press conference, voice steady and clear. "Good morning. My name is Catherine Hayes. I have called this conference not to defend myself, but to protect Apex Hospital and its staff. The information circulating on social media is maliciously fabricated, edited to defame and slander. A young reporter spoke sharply. Mrs. Hayes, the public believes you and Dr. Chen are having an affair and that you fired your husband to clear the way for him. How do you respond? Before I could speak, David took the microphone. He stood, scanning the room with a calm, steady gaze. Regarding my relationship with Chairwoman Hayes, we are longtime friends, trusted colleagues, and professional partners. There is absolutely no illicit affair. I have, however, harbored feelings for Catherine for 15 years, from our student days through her marriage. This love is rooted in respect and admiration, but I have never crossed any ethical line. I kept my feelings private so she could live her life unhindered. Today, seeing her slandered, I cannot remain silent. His candid declaration stunned the room. No one expected such a private, successful man to publicly confess unrequited love in defense of another. Murmurs faded, replaced by respect. David signaled an assistant to project an image on the large screen behind us, preparing to display further evidence of the truth. It was a DNA lab report. The real reason Mr. Thompson was fired, the evidence we had held back to give him a final shred of dignity, was now revealed. The test confirmed that Mark Thompson was the father of a 3-year-old boy living at the Rosebud Children's Home. The auditorium erupted in gasps. Every camera swiveled to the screen. This child was from a relationship 4 years ago, long before Tiffany Jones entered the picture. After the mother passed away from illness, Mark had abandoned his own son, never visiting or providing support while living a life of luxury. A man who cheats on his wife, embezzles from his company, and abandons his own child has no claim to morality or victimhood. The revelation demolished Mark's public image. Suspicion against me vanished, replaced by outrage directed at him. The facade of the dignified CEO was gone, replaced by the image of a cold, heartless man. I looked at David, overwhelmed with gratitude. To protect me, he had exposed the truth, tracking down the boy and helping me turn the tide. The press conference ended as a clear victory for truth. News outlets reversed course, praising my courage and David's integrity, while condemning Mark's actions. Mark was now fully ostracized. He lost his job, reputation, and social standing. Former friends avoided him, and his hidden funds were quickly depleted by PR fees and lavish spending. Desperate, he remembered the expensive gifts he had given Tiffany, the condo, car, and jewelry, and decided he had a right to reclaim them to pay his debts. He arrived at her condo, drunk and furious, banging on the door. Tiffany, facing ruin herself, met him with contempt. "What are you doing here?" she sneered. "Come to leech off me? I'm about to be on the street myself. Give me back the car keys and jewelry I earned." "You stole that money," she said calmly. "It's evidence now. I sold it to pay my fines and legal fees." Enraged, Mark lunged at her. Tiffany fought back, clawing and biting in self-defense. Furniture broke, shouting filled the hallway, and neighbors called the police. When NYPD arrived, they found Mark and Tiffany bruised and disheveled, wrestling on the floor. Both were arrested for disorderly conduct and assault. Photos the next day showed Mark in handcuffs beside Tiffany, headlined, "Bitter End. Disgraced CEO and mistress brawl over stolen fortune." I felt no satisfaction, only pity for lives ruined by greed. A month later, divorce proceedings began. Mark sat across from me with a public defender, 10 years older, hair streaked with gray. The judge reviewed the evidence. Mark pled guilty. When I was granted sole custody of our children, he broke down, shedding the last shred of his humanity. As he was led away to face his criminal trial, he whispered, "I'm sorry, Catherine." I did not reply. An apology meant nothing. I walked toward the courthouse doors, where David waited, smiling warmly. The New York sky was clear, signaling a new beginning. In the months that followed, I poured energy into rebuilding Apex. With David as CEO, we purged corruption and revitalized the hospital. Apex not only recovered, but thrived, becoming a symbol of integrity and medical excellence. Mark was sentenced to 20 years for embezzlement. Tiffany ended up working at a small convenience store in the Midwest, her dreams of wealth and fame reduced to the hum of a cash register. 1 year later, on a crisp autumn evening, David and I dined at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Hudson. After the meal, he slid a small box across the table. Inside was not a ring, but an intricately detailed crystal model of a human heart. "Catherine," he began, voice full of emotion, I've spent my life studying hearts, but I've never fully understood yours. This crystal heart represents my feelings for you. Transparent, constant, and unconditional. Your heart has been hurt, and I want to care for it for the rest of your life. Will you let me? Tears streamed down my face. I looked from the crystal heart to the man before me, the boy from med school, the brilliant doctor, my anchor. Yes, Dr. Chen, I whispered. I will, but this treatment plan lasts a lifetime. 5 years later, we stood side by side, cutting the ribbon for the new Catherine Hayes wing of Apex University Hospital. That afternoon, our family, me, David, and my 2 children, now calling him Dad, walked through the hospital gardens. Laughter filled the air as the children ran ahead. Across the street, I saw a man in shabby clothes, hair white, face marked by hardship. It was Mark, released early, with nothing left. No family, no career, no home. David squeezed my hand. Do you want to talk to him? I watched Mark for a moment, then shook my head. Anger was gone, replaced by quiet pity. The past was behind us. No, I said, smiling at my family. Let's go home. The kids are hungry. Hand in hand with David, we walked toward the warm setting sun. I understood then that the best revenge is not to destroy your enemies, but to build a life of light and happiness that their darkness can no longer touch. And I, Catherine Hayes, had done exactly that.